Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After the module 1 on introduction of the modern medicine, we come upon to the module 2, which is a part of the elective course module on modern medicine developed by Maharashtra University of Health Sciences Nasik under the aegis of National Commission for Homeopathy, New Delhi. I, Colonel Dr. Uday, bring forward to you the second module on scientific basis of modern medicine. Over the next 1 hour, we would like to cover the following specific learning objectives, in which we are going to discuss about the scientific basis of modern medicine, to understand the concept of potion to pill transformation, list the scientific differences between homeopathy and modern medicine, elucidate the key landmark scientific work which led to the modern medicine as on date, to describe those aspects of modern medicine which are keeping the modern medicine up to date and relevant even in 21st century, and be able to answer few frequently asked questions which would be part of the post test. As part of this, let's go ahead with the first part. When the topic was given to me, I was wondering, scientific basis, modern medicine. The word scientific and modern are actually misnomers, because if we travel back in a time machine by around 1000 years, we would say the medicine which was practiced 1000 years back was also modern and scientific for that particular time point. So, any medicinal practice for a given particular day remains to be modern for that particular day and scientific for that particular day. If we look into the publications, you will find articles dating back to 1902, wherein they spoke about scientific aspect of modern medicine even in 1900s. You will find same article with a similar title even published in 1950s and also as lately as 2023. So, the medicine that we practice has always been scientific and modern for that particular point of time. With this, let's get on to the topic for the day. What do we mean by scientific basis of modern medicine? It basically encompasses two important aspects. The first aspect remains to be the application of scientific knowledge, and second is application of evidence-based approach to understand and to treat a disease. So when we are talking about understanding and treating a disease, these two are important. Let's talk about each one of them slightly more in detail. First, let's talk about the scientific knowledge. Now, when we talk about utilization of scientific knowledge for understanding and treating disease, concentrate on the left-sided spiral. A person comes up with the idea saying that by giving a particular drug, a particular disease gets treated. You go through this spiral on the left side of testing your idea. Now, once this idea is tested, then thereafter you put it into a scientific spiral which is on the right hand side, wherein based on the observation or the question which you have in your mind, you create a research area or a research niche. Now, what do you mean by doing this? You basically say, for example, a drug A helps a disease X. Now, this drug A helping disease X is your hypothesis. The treatment of disease X remains to be the research topic area. And how did you get this idea? By your own experiences over last few years or few patients, whichever way. Now, this hypothesis needs to be tested. And how do you do that? So, you take lot of number of disease X patients and you treat them with drug A and something other than drug A, maybe drug B, and see is the drug A helping the disease X or not. Or otherwise, take drug A, take disease X and disease Y and try to give drug A to two different types of diseases. So, there are different experimental models which we will not discuss now, but you put this idea of yours into an experimental model. Now, at the end of it, you get a data. You analyze this data truthfully, ethically, without snubbing anything or without glorifying some component of it. By doing that, you will realize though you had a positive experience when you started with your idea that drug A helps in disease X, in that given patient it might have happened, but it might not have happened in the next 100 cases. The other way is also possible. It might not have helped your patient, but when you look in a cohort of patients or in a group of patients, you might find that it might benefit. So then you report these conclusions, and these reported conclusions are known as evidence. So you come to a evidence in a scientific method, not based on just anecdotes or personal experiences. So this is the first aspect of the scientific basis of modern medicine. Now the second aspect of the modern medicine scientific basis is evidence-based approach. The evidence that you collected from your scientific knowledge or experimentation, that you put it forward into the community. In the community, this can be used by 4 different category of people, as are marked on the right side in that green colored flower. So it can be by patients, it can be by the practitioners, it can be by the public health people, it can be by the collaborators, it can be by the administrators. Different type of people can utilize this evidence in different ways. Now, to give you certain examples, I came to know that this drug A is helping in disease X. When I treat a disease X with it as a practitioner, I have used it for therapeutic purposes. Now, I see that in my community there are a lot of disease X people, so I start investigating or screening people for disease X and start them on an early therapy would be a community based practice. I try to prevent it by looking at is a public health aspect of it, or I see that this particular disease X and drug A requires further elaboration, further refinement, becomes the job of a collaborator. And as an administrator, if I say that this will help my complete country, it can be used. So the evidence, the medical evidence which has evolved out of a scientific knowledge or experimentation can be used by different people in a evidence-based management. Now, when we use the word evidence-based management, it just does not delineate only to the doctor, to his patient. It also means utilizing this information for treating the community as a whole at different levels. Now, what are the different steps for this evidence-based practice is on the left-sided spiral, wherein whenever you get that information or the evidence, how you go about using that in a practice is a left spiral. So, when we say that the modern medicine, there is a scientific basis for the modern medicine, we talk about these 2 broad aspects of generating evidence through scientific knowledge and using this evidence in a scientific way. So that's what means by scientific basis of modern medicine. Now with that introduction, let's go to the next aspect of how does this scientific basis of modern medicine has led to the transformation from the potion to pill. But before I start that, let me give a clear disclaimer. We are definitely going to discuss how and why the potions have got transformed to pills, or the traditional medicine is slowly transforming into a modern medicine, or the people, the community is moving away from traditional to modern medicine. But in no way are we discussing that the potion is not potent, or it is not useful, or it is not helpful. The therapeutic efficacy and the benefit of potions still remain. But what we are going to discuss is what led to the transformation of the society as a whole from the potion to pill. When we talk of potion, we are talking about the medicinal substances from traditional forms. What are these traditional forms? Herbal potions, concoctions. And when we talk about pill, what are we talking about? We are talking about the modern pharmaceutical pills or capsules or the drugs that we are talking about. Now the potions have always been a component of a raw or a crude plant material. To be refined, standardized and dosed medicines, they were transformed for these purposes into a pill. Now, when we talk about the traditional medicine, the major aspect of it was relied upon either the animal or the plant extracts to treat people, and the preparations used to be dependent purely upon diluting them in either water, alcohol or oils to extract the active components out of this and make potions out of it. People also use different terms: potions, decoctions, infusions, tinctures. They are not synonymous, but at the same time, they are all part of the same spectrum that we are talking about. So now let's talk about, in the next few slides, what led to the transformation from the potion to pill. Now this photographs classically shows you different forms of medications which were used during the previous years or the yesteryears. The transformation merely tells us why the current society has moved on to this and how we can implement those things into our traditional medicines to make them also relevant to the current times. The first aspect of this is standardization. When we talk about standardization, we are talking about the traditional potions often lacked consistent dosing. So they were very difficult to ensure precise amount of the active ingredient in each administration. I'll give you an example. Let's take, I say, 10 gram of or 30 gram or 50 grams of a plant product or a plant extract needs to be taken every day for 5 days. I'm not sure how much of the active ingredient is going during every administration. Or if I say 10 gram of this plant product has to be given to 5 different people, I'm not sure how much of the active ingredient is going in these 5 different patients. Whereas on the other hand, the pills allow accurate and standardized dosing. And how does that help? That helps by promoting reliability and reproducibility of treatment. What does that mean? Every time I give the drug, the amount of active ingredient going is exactly the same. So that is the reproducibility, and because the same amount of the active ingredient is going, the amount of therapeutic effect which I am gazing remains constant, which is the reliability. So the pills score over the traditional potions on standardization. The second aspect is convenience and portability. Now traditional potions are used to be very bulky, they required special preparations. So they are always given with a vehicle, and the vehicle never used to have the same quality of potency over a period of time. Thus, there used to be a problem in carrying or porting the traditional medicines. Whereas pills are very comfortable, convenient and portable. Thus, they can be easily stored, transported and administered. Storage I'll come upon in the next few slides, but the difference between traditional versus pills was the convenience of consumption and portability. Now when we talk about storage, the traditional potions may be prone to degradation or loss of potency over a period of time. Not only over a period of time, many of the potions have got specific sensitivity to exposure to light, exposure to air, exposure to moisture. So if you, when you see in your museums all those amber colored glass jars, so the previous medicines used to come in those dark colored jars covered tightly with a glass lid, because there used to be a problem of exposure to air and light and moisture. Whereas these amber colored big jars, they used to keep them away from light, air and moisture. Now you understand for yourself, if I tell you you have a sore throat and you have to carry an amber colored jar every time wherever you are going, becomes very difficult. Now when it comes to pharmaceutical pills, they are designed to be stable, preserving the integrity and effectiveness. Now the pharmaceutical pills are generally, they are integral and effective for longer durations. So it doesn't mean that they are not having a expiry date or a shelf life, but when you look at the stability, The stability is for a longer duration and better when compared to the traditional potions. The next part was enhanced absorption and bioavailability. When I mean by bioavailability, nowadays the modern medicines can be coated, optimized for absorption and bioavailability of the active ingredients. So you can coat them with specific material which will help this active ingredient to get inside the body. A classical example, when you give azoles for fungal management, for treating as an antifungal, you give them with butter or you give those with liposomes. That will ensure that the drug goes to the right place. This ensures that not only does the medication reaches its target site in the body, but it produces exactly the desired therapeutic effect. Because if you can transport a drug to the right place, the benefit would be less number of side effects and more amount of therapeutic effect. The next part of it is the easier dosing regimens. Now, pins can be formulated as controlled release mechanism drugs, by which I mean you can give the drugs or you can make the drug pills in such a way that they can slowly release the drug throughout the day. You have taken the drug only once, but it will have a sustained release or extended drug release. Now, how does this help? This helps in decreasing the number of dosages that you have to give. If you have to give the same drug 3 times in a day, you give sustained release or controlled release one drug in the morning, you don't need to give 3 times in a day. Second, it simplifies the complex medical regimens. Otherwise, if I say that there are 4 drugs which have to be taken 3 times in a day, so the individual is taking 12 tablets in a day. But if I give controlled release drugs, I have to just give 4 drugs, that's all. So you can cut down on the prescription. Third, it improves the patient compliance and adherence. All of you would understand, it's so difficult to remember drugs to be taken. If I have a sore throat, I don't take the drugs for 5 days. I forget it after day 2 or day 3. If somebody with a hypertension, one of your parents or grandparents, when they have to take drugs for blood pressure or diabetes, you would understand it is so difficult to every day remember that they have to take the drug. If I cut down on the number of drugs, it can improve the compliance. So, the important aspects as far as the potion to pill concept is 1. The portability, stability, the ease of giving the drug and improving the bioavailability. So, these are the major advantages of having a transformation from potion to pill. After understanding the scientific basis of modern medicine and what led to transformation from potion to pill in the society, let's talk about few scientific differences between the homeopathy and the modern medicine. In the module 1, you heard about the differences between the traditional medicine and modern medicine, but here we are going to talk about the scientific differences. So these differences arise from variations in their underlying principles, the treatment approaches, the scientific evidence. So principally, homeopathy happens to be based on the principle of like cures like, where a substance that can produce symptoms in a healthy person is actually diluted and administered as a remedy for similar symptoms in a sick person. The dilutions are often extreme and often reaching the point where there are no molecules of the original substance remaining. So there is a fear in the public. This concept contradicts the fundamental principle of pharmacology and biochemistry, which works on the scientific plausibility and evidence-based principle, which we discussed in the part 1 of this module. So, the pharmacology and the biochemistry, they rely upon understanding pathophysiology of the disease, the mechanism of action of the drugs, and extensive research to establish the safety and efficacy. So principally, homeopathy and modern medicine, they differ on these 2 aspects. The second difference is the difference on dilution and potentiation. Now, homeopathic remedies undergo a process of serial dilution and vigorous shaking, which is generally called potentiation, resulting in remedies which often contain negligible or undetectable amount of the original substance. The process is believed to enhance the medicinal properties of the substance while reducing the toxicity, which is actually true. But the resulting remedies often contain very minuscule amount of the original substances, which needs to be scientifically proven for therapeutic efficacy. Modern medicine, in contrast, relies on pharmaceutical drugs that are developed through rigorous research, testing, and quality control. The medications are formulated to contain specific amounts of active ingredients based on the scientific understanding of the mechanism of their action. The next aspect is the evidence-based medicine. Now, homeopathy, despite being a great science and has been present for decades together and successfully employed for treating so many diseases, the biggest challenge or the criticism from the Western literature is for its lack of scientific evidence supporting its efficacy. And we, being the cradle or the birth ground for this particular science, the onus lies upon us to bring about more and more scientific evidence for homeopathy in the future. Thus, the Western people say that the multiple systematic reviews and meta-analysis which have concluded that homeopathic remedies are no more effective than placebo, which we necessarily don't agree with, but it's our responsibility to prove that there is a scientific evidence even for homeopathy and the therapeutic efficacy of each and every part of the homeopathic science. The modern medicine, on the other hand, the Western literature says that it is grounded in evidence-based practices. It emphasizes the use of rigorous scientific research, trials, systematic reviews to establish the safety and efficacy of the medical intervention. Coming to the mechanism of action, the mechanism by which homeopathic remedies are believed to work are not really supported by scientific evidence, but the proponents suggest that what is known as potentized remedies or potentiation, because of the serious dilution and shaking, have an energetic effect on the body, simulating its self-healing mechanisms. So it's potentiating our own body's principles. But this concept really does not go well with the principles of physics, chemistry and biology of the body. Modern medicine, on the other hand, relies on comprehensive understanding of biological processes and mechanism of the disease. Regulatory standards as far as the homeopathic remedies are concerned varies from country to country. In some regions, homeopathic products are regulated as over-the-counter products, while in other countries they may be classified as dietary supplements, and in some third group of countries you have a strict regulations for homeopathic medicines at par as a pharmaceutical drug. So, it is important that the regulatory standards of a given country are uniformly standardized and brought to a certain level to ensure a quality control and improving the therapeutic efficacy and bringing out better scientific knowledge after using a homeopathic drug. Modern medicine is subject to strict regulatory standards across the world. They undergo rigorous testing and approval systems, thus making it quality approved. Now, with the understanding of differences in the homeopathy and the modern medicine, let's talk about few key landmark scientific work which led to the transformation from traditional to modern medicine. Because if you go back any time before 1800s, the only form of medicine which was aggressively used across the world was traditional medicine. But by 21st century, what happened which led to transformation from traditional to modern medicine? So, this is based on four primary factors. These are considered as the four pillars of scientific basis of modern medicine. The first is the changes in the medical aspects, the changes in the surgical aspects, the changes in the public health aspect and changes in the pharmacology. We'll talk about each one of them. If somebody asks me what led to this transformation, I'll just put across this table. I understand it would be very difficult to read and understand this. So, I'll divide this into these four pillars. In the first pillar, when we talk about the medical part of it, So a great understanding of what caused the disease and what led to the disease became more accurate when Louis Pasteur actually spoke about germ theory in 1861. It heralded the discovery of bacteria. Thereafter, Martinez spoke about viruses. Because of the pointing out of the germ theory and the discovery of the viruses, it could be brought forward that most of the diseases in the community were infectious in nature and they can be targeted. So previously we were shooting in the dark. Now from 1861 onwards they gave us the targets. What are the targets which are leading to a problem which can be tackled with. The second part in the transformation was the Landsteiner's discovery in coming up with the blood groups. So he said that different people had different blood groups. You might be thinking, how does a blood group identification can lead to a transformation from traditional to modern medicine? It's not the blood group which led to the transformation, but for checking blood groups, the concept of blood test came in. And they showed that the testing blood can help in identifying harmful warning signs and can detect diseases. That led to the discovery of further cholesterol, blood sugar levels, and slowly over a period of time, huge number of things are now diagnosed based on blood testing. So the Landsteiner came up with the concept of testing the blood, and this testing of blood became the complete key turning point for the sciences of laboratory medicine, or what we call as pathology, microbiology and biochemistry. So that was a second important discovery. The third important discovery was by Röntgen and Curie of talking about X-rays and radiation. So this led to the development of X-ray machines, and by World War I, most of the injuries can actually be picked up which part of the body is getting injured or which bone was getting injured, and this improved over the next few years to come up with the discovery of the CT scan and the MRI scans in 1970s, and now we have got an array of the imaging techniques, and the imaging techniques helps us in diagnosing or in identifying disease at an earlier stage. The last of the medical discovery which I am going to say, which was a key or a landmark discovery, was the understanding of the DNA or the genetic material. It led to the identification of various genetic conditions earlier which were considered inherited only based on history of a mother and a child having it or a father and a child having it, now went on to the aspect that there are problems with the DNA, and these problems in the DNA can lead to problems, and you can diagnose those people by reading this DNA. So that led to the complete change in understanding of the inherited disorders, and now with the current era of CRISPR-Cas9 and genetic editing, we are way ahead in trying to tailor and manipulate the genetic material. Coming upon to the surgical aspects. The way the medicine evolved, surgery also evolved at the turn of the century, wherein Joseph Lister first time spoke about cleaning the operation theatre, making it aseptic and germ free. So the germ theory which said that the germs can cause problems, so the surgeon said, why not make the operation theatre germ free? This was a key turning point as far as decreasing the post-operative mortality or the deaths are concerned. Earlier in 1800s also people used to undergo surgeries, 1700s also people used to undergo surgery, but the success rate in 1700s was 5%, which went up in 1800s to 10%, but with this germ-free theory or aseptic theory, the survival after a surgery went up to 50 to 60%. So this was a key turning point as far as the surgical sciences are concerned. The Landsteiner discovery of blood groups also helped in blood transfusions. So In World War I, not only were the injuries identified by X-rays, but also people started defining or developing techniques of storing blood, developing blood banks and giving blood to the people who are injured, thus saving lots of lives. So, the blood group discovery led to storage of blood and development of blood banks. And at the turn of the century, the first transplants to be done were cornea and skin transplants, and they were successfully done, which led to the hope that transplantation of different organs in the body can be done. So these were the landmark studies at the turn of the century from 20th to 21st century, which led to the development of the surgical sciences. Now coming to the pharmacological landmark studies which led to the evolution, the discovery of the antibodies and antitoxin led to the creation of a synthetic antibody for the first time by Paul Ehrlich, known as magic bullet. Now this magic bullet, which was discovered in the early 1900s, was against syphilis, and it was known as Salvarsan 606, which effectively treated syphilis. Then came the concept that yes, we can start synthetically manufacturing drugs and we can combat the infections in the world. This was taken forward in the next 15 years by Alexander Fleming when he spoke about penicillin, the world's first antibiotic. And then the survival after infections went up from somewhere around 10 to 15% to 80 to 90%. Penicillin was considered as a panacea for any bacterial infection on earth. 1960s brought the discovery of the antiviral drugs. People realized by 1950s that despite of a well coverage by penicillin, there are still a substantial number of people who are dying because of infections, and which was later thought to be secondary to viruses. So, the discovery of the antiviral drugs in 1960s led to the treatment of the complete infection spectrum, which mainly constituted bacteria and viruses. The work of Pierre and Marie Curie and the development of radiation and use of radiation for treatment, which was known as radiotherapy, brought in the treatment of cancers. And cancers, which were considered to be totally mortal, were started getting treated by use of radiation. So radiation brought in a huge change as far as the treatment of cancers are concerned. So in pharmacology, the major landmarks have been the magic bullet, the penicillin, the antiviruses and the radiotherapy. The other important aspect or the fourth pillar of the landmark development or transformation from traditional to the modern medicine has been the public health. When we talk of medicine, we should not restrict medicine only to treating patients. Health is different from disease. Health is a positive word, disease is a negative word. When we talk about a positive health in the community, we are talking about the community not having disease at all. And this concept came in 1875 in the form of a Public Health Act, wherein the UK government had taken a step of actively controlling the various public health issues. They started off with hygiene theory. They closed the open defecation to closed defecation. This led to having an improvement in the overall well-being of the population. They were the first in the world to start about successful vaccination campaigns, because they used to have a lot of companies or colonies across the world, and particularly in the Southeast Asia, in the Africa, and many of the troops used to suffer from infectious diseases. So to prevent these infectious diseases for their troops, they started these vaccination campaigns, and that led to the eradication of diphtheria and polio in these countries. In addition, a greater public consciousness, like we are talking about smoking cessation now in 22nd century, whereas they were talking about a smoking cessation in 1880 and 1890, there used to be a public platform wherein the vehicles were or the carts were run in the cities or in the urban or the counties by campaigning against smoking, against alcohol, against proper sexual health practices. Because during those times, sexually transmitted infections were one of the major problems. So, they were the first to talk about health education and the public consciousness. So, this led to what is known as a public health improvement in the world. So, these are the four pillars based on which the traditional medicine transformed or diverted or got deviated because of the aggressive research on these four aspects to the modern medicine. Now coming to the foundations of the scientific basis of modern medicine, which are keeping it relevant in the 21st and the 22nd century are, these are the various aspects which are the scientific foundations for the modern medical education, research and clinical practice. The first one being anatomy and physiology. The modern medicine heavily relies on thorough understanding of the structure and the function of human body. The structure is studied as anatomy and the function as physiology. This includes knowledge of organs, tissues, cells and their interrelation. The next one is pathophysiology. It involves studying the abnormal changes in the body structure and function that occur during the development of the disease. Understanding pathophysiology helps identify the underlying mechanisms of the disease and guides treatment strategies. The next important part is the biochemistry and the molecular biology. The modern medicine utilizes knowledge of biochemistry and molecular biology to investigate the chemical processes, interactions with living organisms, and this understanding aids in diagnosing diseases, developing theories, and in designing drugs. The pharmacology, the next foundation, is the study of drugs and their effects on the body, which is extremely crucial in modern medicine. It not only involves the understanding of the drug actions and the interactions, but also it talks about helping in choosing the appropriate medication for the appropriate disease. So that part is extremely crucial. The epidemiology is the study of patterns, causes and effects of the disease in a given population. It provides essential data for understanding the distribution of the diseases, identifying the risk factors and designing strategies for disease prevention and control. The next part is clinical trials and evidence-based medicine. I will not emphasize too much upon it because we have spoken enough about the clinical trials and evidence-based medicine both in the module 1 as well as in the module 2. Imaging and diagnostics, again we have reiterated quite a bit about it, but it is one of the important foundation of the modern medicine. Genetics and genomics. The field of genetics has really revolutionized the modern medicine by elucidating the role of genes in healthy individuals and in diseased individuals. Nowadays, we have gone to a stage where we say that if a person has to remain healthy, he has to have a genetic makeup for that, and if a person has to remain unhealthy, he need to have a genetic reason for that. So everything is linked to genetics nowadays by use of genome-wide association studies. But the point is, the genetic testing and genomic research contribute to personalized medicine, allowing tailored treatment based on individual genetic makeup. Medical ethics and patient care. Whatever we talk about the different aspects of the modern medicine, if we do not have a proper medical ethics, and I am showing you on this figure the 4 important pillars of the medical ethics. So the medical ethics, and if you don't bother about a ethical patient care, nothing falls in place. And in this, the traditional medicine scores much above the modern medicine because the human touch is still not lost in the traditional medicine, which is almost lost in the modern medicine. So, to summarize the complete story of what we have spoken in this module till now, the medicine has always been modern and scientific from ancient times to the present day. When we say what is the scientific basis of medicine, the scientific basis of modern medicine are 1. The scientific knowledge, 2. The evidence-based approach for understanding and treating a disease. Why did we transform, or what led to transformation from potion to pill? Standardization, convenience of the patients, portability of the drugs, increased stability, enhanced absorption and bioavailability, and easier dosing regimens. This led to the transformation from potion to pill. The major scientific differences between homeopathy and modern medicine are principles of similars and scientific plausibility, the concept of dilution and potentiation, the evidence-based medicine, the mechanism of actions, and regulatory standards. The key landmark studies as far as the medicine were concerned were the germ theory, the discovery of the viruses, the discovery of the various blood groups leading to blood testings, and discovery of X-rays and radiation. In surgery, the key landmark studies were the concept of asepsis or germ-free environment, the concepts of giving blood transfusions to the individuals, and later the technology to help in identifying the pathology and the clear disease margins. In pharmacology, the major landmark studies have been, the first one being the development of the magic bullet or the salvarsan for treating syphilis, the discovery of penicillin in 1928, in 1960s the discovery of antiviral agents, and thereafter now we are talking about genetic editing. Public health, the major aspect has been 1875, the UK government talking about Public Health Act, and which stood as a standard for various countries to come up with various public health policies. And the scientific foundation for the modern medicine lies on anatomy, physiology, understanding pathophysiology of the disease, understanding biochemistry and molecular biology, pharmacology, epidemiology, doing clinical trials and using evidence-based medicine, imaging and diagnostics, genetics and genomics, and medical ethics. These are few things which I would suggest you to read. Unlike module 1, in this module I will give you certain medical books which you need to refer for understanding the scientific basis of modern medicine, and these are the various medical literature that you can go through. These are few of the references for what talk which we have spoken to you till now, and the various bibliography for the slides which I have shown you till now. Now we will take you to a post test for understanding your grasp on the subject after this module.